Greetings, Internet, and welcome to Aaron Plays, and I hope you're doing fantastically well. I'm not doing brilliantly. I must admit, I've just come back from the pub, or in American terms, a bar, to watch my team, Leeds United, lose in the playoff championship final 1-0 to Southampton. So I'm not in the greatest of mood in that regard. However, I'm talking about gaming, which definitely cheers me up. And today I'm going to carry on my look, make sure that's in the center, of this one, DA something or other. I still haven't quite worked out how to pronounce it. So, yeah. And these are the rules. So we're going to look at the rules. I'm playing an actual vassal game of this tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. But I need to go through the rules, and I thought I'd go through the rules with you guys so you know what at least I'm talking about. So without any further, other than please remember, if you do like what I do, tickle that like button, because it's through the like buttons I know if you guys are actually enjoying this. The views, but likes and comments, that's where I know that I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So anyway, let's go to the screen which shows what's going on. Right, apparently this is pronounced Dooss Ah-yeah, 2, which stands for God helps or God help us, which fits with the Return of the Danes subtitle. So this is the map of the first scenario. Now, I'm not going to play through this scenario. This scenario will be played tomorrow. I will be asking my opponent if he doesn't mind if I put a log file on it so we can go through the actual. I can skip through the game like I've been doing with Panzerblitz. I haven't asked him if he wants to play live, but this is what we'll, as in recording live what we're playing. But this is a stopgap for me. So as you can see, we're on here. The Reds are the Normans, and they're coming on this map edge number 2. And we have the Saxons, or the remnants of the Saxon army, over here. Then these aren't set up at all. I mean, I don't even know what side I'm playing currently. I might just do a setup for the Saxons just in case, and work it from there. This is a turn counter up the top here. That keeps track of the actual turns. And this is a 12-turn scenario. The victory condition is the Normans need to get off this board edge. The Saxons need to stop them. So what I wanted to do with this video is talk through the rules of play. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole rules because this scenario doesn't require them. If you watch my introduction to the game in a previous video, I believe this only goes up to about page 13 of the rules. Don't read any further. You can already play scenario 1 and 2. Okay. So I'm going to take the rules up to that point. Okay. Now, looking at the actual map board, let's look at the actual terrain that we've got here. So this here is a flat terrain hex. Okay. Movement cost for everybody is 1. Type of cover, as you'd expect, none. Effect on combat, none. These here are scrub. It costs 2 movement points for an infantry unit to move through that, and 4 for a horse. Cover is light, so if you're in there, you're in light cover. And effect on combat is a negative, so it's a negative effect on the attacker. We have some trees. Now each hex in this is about 2 meters. So yeah, trees. They're impassable to horses, as you would expect, and it costs 2 for foot. Again, light cover and a negative effect on the attacker in combat. The main thing on this map, though, is these are slopes. And look where the actual shading is. The shading is the top of the slope. So this is the bottom. That's the actual slope itself, and that's upper. So again, That's also upper for that slope and lower for that slope. Now, this map is called the ditch. As you would think, that's that there.
Latitude for St. Peters
is the ditch.
Is 51.367 degrees.
And Alexa's gone a butt in, hasn't she? Let me just stop her. Okay, Alexas are really useful devices, but why do they butt in when I don't even make any sound that even sounds like her name? You know, because we normally have to say Alexa. I shouldn't be ranting in this video. But I'm not really going to record the whole video I've just started because of that. So, anyway, where were we? All right, talking about this map is called the ditch. The actual scenario we're going to be playing, I say it's the first one in the return to the Danes, and it's called the Malfossé, which is apparently yes, something to do with the word ditch in French, I suppose. And the Norman knights closed on a ditch called the Malifos. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so we got slopes. Okay, this will be the lower level, slightly upper, and then the highest part is that ridge over there. Then we have marsh, which is this. I haven't explained actually what slopes do. So it's 2 for a foot unit to go from onto the slope and then beyond, 4 for a horse, and it's 4 cover, medium cover if fire crosses the top lip. Okay, and again, negative impact on the attacker. Marsh, light cover, 2 foot, 4 for horse. There's no rocks on here. We have these hexes here. Now, it doesn't say exactly what they are. Are they river? Are they swamp? Or marsh? I'm not quite sure what they actually are. So let's have a look, see if it defines it on the charts and tables. This is the charts and tables you get. See, it says river, but that's a solid blue. So I'm going to assume that class is river, which is 4 for foot, impassable to horses or characters with armor. Light except if the shooter is adjacent to the water hex. Okay. So, yeah, something to be avoided, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So if there is anyone who is, put it in the comments. I will ask when me and my opponent start tomorrow, we'll say, what are we defining those as? Because according to this, there's nothing quite right. It's not really a river, is it? More like a pond. Remember, these are only like 2 meters, as I said, across. So, not too sure. But that's all the real terrain that we have. So now let's have a look at some of the counters and what details we have. Now I'm going to take over a Norman knight. Now we'll take over one of the Saxons. And I'm going to zoom in. You can get a good decent zoom on these. Notice I put like a red border around the Normans. There's actually a yellow border around the Saxons. Now, this is something you can't do with a physical board game. So it can get a bit, when you're playing with a physical game, it can get a bit tricky working out who's who. So what I normally do is put a little green counter on one side and nothing on the other, so I know who is actually who. It doesn't seem to do any further, but that gives enough detail. All right. So looking at those, so say we have a Norman knight, and that's denoted by the little code down here. N for Norman and CX. CX is for the cavalry, and the K stands for, you guessed it, knight. It gives their classification. So we're looking at the Saxons. The Saxons are denoted by leading that character of an X. The C is actually stands for cavalry, but these guys are dismounted. These guys would actually be mounted Thanes, but they're dismounted. And the T stands for Thane. Okay, so there are mounted. So if we look at another Saxon unit here, and every time I move, they get the little M next to it. XIL stands for Saxon, I infantry, L light. And he's got a little number there that shows he's got one shot with his weapon. Okay, now we've got 3 numbers on each character. The top number is the attack value. The second number is the defense value. And note some of them are circled and some not. And the third one is the movement value. Okay, if the defense value is circled, it means they are armored. And so this guy isn't armored. And then you've got the names of the characters as well. Okay, each character is actually named. Now, as you can see, a mounted figure or character takes up 2 hexes. And if you need to note, there's a little arrow at there at the top. That denotes which direction they're going. The infantry units or the foot units have all round facing, whereas a mounted unit has facing to the 3 hexes to his front of his arrow. Those to either side are his flank, and then the 3 behind are his rear. So when it comes to moving these guys, they move according to the arrow. And I can rotate clockwise. Yeah, let's go clockwise. Okay, and then he carries on moving there. Okay, so yeah, so that's how they move through the frontal hexes. Then I can change. Oh, that was a swing out to his rear. Let's do that again, and such forth. Okay, that's how mounted guys move in the direction of their arrow. Right, so that's enough moving him around. And then he comes back. So you've got 3 values. As I said, you've got attack, defense, circled defense is armored, uncircled is unarmored, and movement, which is in blue. Now, each of these counters, and we'll start with the Norman one, has 4 sides. So I can flip him. Now, let's just see which is the actual flip button. There. Is it there? Down. No, that's not it. Which is the mark, move, decrease. There we go. So on the reverse side of the counter is a dismounted horse. So the guy would have actually dismounted at that point. And I could put, so let's increase him again. I can look at his name, GUISCARD. I've got all the units over here. Normans. Oh, I might need a little bit more space for him. There we go. Normans, knights, mounted, on foot. And we know he is Yausha. So he'd be replaced by this guy, and then you would actually remove the horse. Sorry, remove the man with the horse. So therefore it's just a horse, and the guy has gone off his horse and then can move his infantry. There are rules about how fast they can move, how much movement points they can convert over to the actual mounted side, but yeah. Now, also, if the guy has stayed on his horse, I could decrease him further, and that's his wounded side. Now, his attack value is decreased, his defense decreased, but his movement stayed the same because the horse isn't wounded, it's the man that's wounded. Okay, and then if I decrease him again, it's a dead horse. Okay, and you keep the dead on the field because they become effectively terrain. So this guy, if his horse is being shot out from him, he's also got, if we decrease him, he becomes stunned. We decrease him again, he becomes wounded. So you can see again his values have dropped, and he's got nice little arrows stuck in his shield. Decrease him again, he's dead. Okay, but if you decrease him, he goes back up to full. Yeah. So a foot figure has effectively 4 sides. You have full strength, stunned, wounded, dead. And when he's mounted, he has the additional 4 sides with the horse, which is mounted full strength, dismounted from the horse, wounded on the horse, dead horse. So that's what the figures do, and that's the numbers that are on the figures. And again, you've got the little codes that go with them. That's the counters. And we're already on page 5 of the rules. That is it. Okay. The next thing is a sequence of play. Okay. So the scenario will determine who will be the first player. And then you have player A and a phase of player A and a phase of player B. First step in each phase is offensive fire. So all the missile troops of side A can fire, except for those that are in contact with enemy characters. So we have this guy here who's actually got a javelin. If the Saxons were first, he could throw that javelin at him. Okay, or it could be an axe. I'm not quite sure what weapon they're armed with. We do actually have, if I zoom out, some specific javelinists. Which are over here. Let's bring one of those into the fray as well, and zoom back in. Okay, right. So notice he's got an XIJ, which stands for Saxon Infantry Javelinist, and he's actually got 3 shots, so he can lob 3 javelins at that particular night. We'll come to how that actually works once we finish the sequence of plays. So the first is the offensive fire. Guys can fire. Announcement of cavalry charges and counter charges. Okay. So player A announces one by one the charges that he intends to make with his cavalry. Player B has, in some cases, the option of declaring a counter charge. Now, I think the rules for charge and counter charge are beyond our particular breakdown of this scenario. I think, yeah, those are because it's yeah, that sometimes does make you laugh. They give the scenario cavalry, but they say you can play scenario 1 and 2, and there's cavalry in scenario 1. Duh. Okay, that's not great, is it? But anyhow, so you can declare charges. Obviously not with a dead horse, so let's just put him back up there and maybe dismount his guy to the side for the moment. Then, after all the declared charges, okay, you don't move them at this point, you're just declaring them. Movement and defensive fire. All characters of side A who didn't shoot, so if you shoot, you can't move, can move. Others must respect the limitations of their weapon type. There are some units that can fire and move. Side B, while these units can move, can fire defensive missile fire, while characters of side A move, using only characters that are not in contact with the enemy, so you can't fire anything from contact with the enemy. These characters again must respect the specifics of defensive fire, which we'll come to. After all movement, it's combat. All the characters of side A that are in contact with enemy characters can attack. Not must, can. Except those missile troops who already fired in step 1. And then the final step is stun character. All the characters of side A that were stunned during the phase of the player B recover by turn over the counters concerned. So anything that was stunned in player B's last time can now turn back over. And the phase for player B is exactly the same. Okay. It does mention it is important to keep a strict order of play, otherwise you can get lost. So we've gone through the terrain, we've gone through the sequence. So how do characters actually move? So each character has a number of movement points as described on the counter, and each hex can be entered. Stacking. It is allowed for characters to pass through hexes containing a friendly character, any stunned character or a dead character. But at the end of each movement phase, there must be no more than one living character in any hex. So you can move through your own guys. You can remain stacked with a dead dude, but you can't be stacked with a living character. Characters cannot pass through hexes containing enemy characters unless they are stunned or dead. Then going back on the water and tree hexes, characters on horseback cannot pass through a tree hex, a building interior, which we haven't got on this map, or a river hex. Horses without a rider and led by the bridle can cross tree hexes and cross water hexes. So you can lead a horse, you just can't ride a horse through those hexes. And then it gives other restrictions on certain terrain. Hexes containing dead dudes. Hexes containing 3 dead persons or 1 dead horse cost 1 movement point more than the normal cost. Hexes containing 6 dead persons or 2 dead horses become impassable. And 3 dead persons and a horse is the same, impassable. You can move these things. You can use your dudes to move dead things out the way to create a path. And there are a certain amount of characters, and there's a little rule section on how to do that. You can also carry stunned characters, again, getting them out of the front line. And now we come to one of the most complex part of the rules, which is infiltration of enemy lines. So I'm going to use, let's get a couple of Norman knights on the board. Right, we'll move the mounted dude out of the way. Okay, let's put these here. And we've got some Saxons on the board as well. So think of, I mean, from a role-playing terms, it's like attack of opportunity. It stops people just move. There's no sort of really zone of control, but it represents something that could happen if you move past the first hex. So when a character crosses a hex during his movement, which is adjacent to an enemy who is in a position to attack, he must immediately face an infiltration test before continuing his movement. So that's important. So if I move this guy there and there and stop, there is no infiltration attack. But if I decide to move to there, then this guy can attack him in that position before continuing his movement. And how does an infiltration attack work? Okay, let me bring up the charts and tables again. And there should be, that's a siege one, so we're not wanting that. And there should be a little infiltration. There we go, at the bottom there, infiltration table. So you roll dice. Okay. So when a character crosses a hex during its movement, which is adjacent to an enemy who is in a position to attack, he must immediately face an infiltration test before continuing his movement. The opposing player rolls a d10 and checks the infiltration table. He rolls a die as many times as there are enemies adjacent to the hex in question. Only 1 attack per enemy per phase. This rule only applies to hexes that are being crossed. A character that ends its movement on a hex adjacent to an enemy, like I showed you, must attack all enemies adjacent to that hex or make an infiltration check for each hex. Each he will not attack and who is not attacked in this same phase. Not quite sure what it means there. So we'll go back over that. But effectively, in that example we gave, the defender would roll a dice, 1 to 5 no effect, 6, 7 movement stopped, 8, 9 character wounded, and a 10 character killed. And there are modifiers. Characters attempted to infiltrate. If they're a rider, there's a -1. Remember, low is good. Armored is another -1. But if they're already wounded, +2. And character attempts to oppose the infiltrations. If they're a rider, sometimes it's difficult to get down to stop the guy infiltrating. And if they're wounded, if the guy is infiltrating, character attempting to oppose the infiltration, which is the guy that's actually moving. It could be better written. Okay. Yeah. So let's move that out of the way. So a stunned enemy is therefore excluded as he can't attack. Consequences of infiltration tests are put in effect immediately. A wounded character may not be able to continue his movement as a result. So it says the opposing player rolls a d10 and checks the infiltration table. He rolls the die as many times. So this is the part as there are enemies adjacent to the hex in question. Only 1 attack per enemy per phase. Well, in our example, there's only 1 guy there. He rolls die as many times as there are enemies adjacent to the hex in question. Okay, I'm going to pause and reread that because I thought I had my head around it, but I did say this was the most complex. Okay, so let's carry on. So you roll the D10, you check the infiltration. He rolls the die as many times as there are enemies adjacent to the hex in question. Well, there's only going to be one enemy in the question. I mean, if there was already another guy in there, so this guy moves from there to there and then to there. This guy can attack that guy. And according to that, when this is moved on he rolls the die as many times as there are enemies adjacent to the hex in question. I'm still confused on that, but let's move on. This rule only applies to hexes that are being crossed. So let's move that guy back. So this guy's moving from there to there to there. He's crossing that hex there. Okay. This rule only applies to hexes. It is not necessary to perform a test for movement of one hex only. So if this guy started there and moves to there, there is no infiltration. Or if a character wants to change opponents by moving only one hex. So if he started there and moved to there, again, no infiltration because he started, but he could have been attacking this guy and now ends up attacking that guy. A character who ends his movement on a hex adjacent to the enemy does not roll the dice. So again, if he was there and goes to there, there is no infiltration. It says for mounted character, the die is rolled only once, even if they occupy two hexes. Because remember, carry unit occupies two hexes. The side of the black triangle is the one taken into consideration. So as that horse moves, and we'll rotate it. No, rotate it the wrong way. That's something I've got to get my head, which is kind of right. So he moves there and then goes to there. I know these are Norman, so we'll actually move into there. This guy can then do an infiltration attack on that as it's in that hex. Even though the move is from there to there, he attacks that hex as he moves to there, and it's only attacked once. During the combat phase, advances and retreats are also considered movements. So as you retreat away from an enemy, it could instigate a infiltration attack. So as I say, probably the most complex, and I still don't quite get how you'd get multiple attacks on the same one, but that you can see the purpose of it. It's to stop people moving around willy-nilly. Special movement rules for mounted characters, right? So that's how we see how we move a mounted character. So he's sitting there, okay. So it costs one movement point to go into there, or there, or there. Okay. If you want to turn the horse, so again, I'm clockwise. Yeah, it gets me that way. Okay. And then move into that hex. That costs 2 movement points. Okay. And if you want to turn completely round, that costs 5. 180 degrees. Mounting and dismounting from a horse. To mount or dismount from a horse, an unarmored cavalryman spends 2, an armored one spends 3. These points are deducted from the movement allowance shown on the counter before the character mounts or dismounts. Okay, and when you dismount to either of the two sides. You don't dismount over its head. Okay. You can mount a horse, which you can actually mount from any adjacent hex. So, but you can only mount a horse if you are only characters that have a mounted counter to mount horses. Okay. Horses without riders could be led, and you've got horses struggling through certain terrains. Don't want to spend too long with them because when we play, I'll be going through the rules as well. Missile fire. Okay. So, and again, you've got things like fire and movement. Some units can do that. And again, this is on this chart here. Okay. Looking at this lower part. Each weapon type, as you can see on, let's move that up a bit. Right, so you've got Normans, Saxons, and Scots, Vikings, type of missile weapon: mounted lance, foot javelin, sling, short bow, crossbow. So in this scenario, there is only foot javelins. Okay, and they've got a range. Short range is 1 to 5 hexes, medium range 6 to 12, and long range 13 to 25. And as it says, the frequency of fire, you can only fire them during the offensive fire. Things like short bows and slings can be fired offensively and defensively, but javelins can only be fired offensively. Okay. Limit on movement, no limit. Okay. Though, if they fire, as you know, in the sequence of play, they have the restriction that all missile troops of side A can fire except for those that were in contact with an enemy. Okay. All characters side A who didn't shoot in step 1 can move. So if they fire, they can't move. So what's it means by the limits of movement? Okay, so looking at those javelin men, they can move and fire, because that's why it says no limit. However, they won't be able to attack. So they can move up to an enemy, but they won't be able to attack, because if they throw the javelin, if they don't throw the javelin, then they can still attack. Someone like a bowman or crossbowman, let's have a look at a crossbowman. If he fires offensive or defensive, he can't move at all. Whereas a short bowman, if he offensive fires, he can move, but he won't be able to go into combat. He can go into adjacent to an enemy, but he won't be able to attack. And if he offensives and defensive fires, his movement's reduced by half. Okay. There are modifiers to the die roll when it comes to firing. And you have, if the range is, so you identify the type of weapon used by the shooter. Okay, so if we're using let's say we're using foot javelins, you can see missile fire against mounted targets, short bow or javelin, and then you've got the type of cover that the guy is in, and you add one to the die roll if he's armored, and that gives an effect. So if we roll a 3, for example, right, with a short bow against a guy who's in the open, that gives a target a class hit of a C, which I'm not in the wrong chart up. Offensive fire, horse unharmed, rider wounded with a C. If we rolled a 6, that'd be an A. If it was offensive fire, rider retreats. Defensive fire, rider's movement allowance is not reduced by 4 for this turn. So there's various effects versus infantry and cavalry. Now, we also have a thing called the impact, depending on the actual ranges that you fire at. Now, there's an impact table to see which actual hex you hit if you're not within, now I can't remember, I think it was 2 or 3 hexes. Check the distance between the shooter and his target. The number of hexes excluding the one the shooter is in to assess the range, short, medium, or long. Determine the impact test. Okay. So you're working out. So if you've got firing into a melee where there's quite a few guys, you could hit the wrong guy. But I can't remember the range. There is a certain range below. I think it's 2 hexes. It could be 3 that you don't use the impact hex. But once you're beyond that, then you do. I'll have to double check that in the rules when I get to it. But yeah, so there is a risk of when you're firing into a melee, you could hit the wrong guys. You got retreats from shooting, and also got line of fire or line of sight. Let's just get that out of the way for the moment. I'm not going to go into the line of sight rules in detail. Short to say though, if you're in the ditch here and you're further back than from the slope, you probably can't see the opponent. The line of sight rules, as per most of these games, line of sight rules are opaque, difficult until you actually start playing, and then you go, oh yeah. But they're all slightly different, aren't they? When it comes to combat, so let's have a look at these two guys having a fight. And why have they lost their red? Because I brought them on afterwards. Let's make him red. Okay. There, colour. He's yellow colour. There we go. He's now red. Okay. So when it comes to guys fighting, and there are bits of terrain, these guys, two guys in the open, you compare attack value to defense value. Okay. Bringing those charts back up. So on here, you've got the terrain. You also got combat tables. So you look at the two dudes that are actually fighting. So it's 12 versus 7. Okay, and you look at the difference between the two. So we're looking at 0 to 4 difference, aren't we? 12 to 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5. So we're looking at that column there. And that's common against mounted. So we're not looking at that column at all. We're looking at that one there because it's two foot guys. And again, there's some letters there. All right. You then look to see if there's any terrain involved. And we know there isn't because there's two guys standing in the open. So a die is rolled and result computed. So on A, attacker wounded. A B, one attacker retreats. A C, all defenders retreat, and so on. Okay. And F, if you get, well, there's no chance of killing until you get to a 13 to 20 differential. How do you get that high difference? Well, you do get that high difference. If we bring the mounted knight into the equation and he's attacking there, we're looking at 25 to 7. Okay. And then you've got the two guys could attack combined. You add their two attack values against that one defense value. And so it continues. You can have combat against one or more than one character. So a single character cannot attack several opponents at the same time. When two characters or more decide to attack one enemy character, they can attack individually, or alternatively, they can add their attack points to create a single total factor, which is used to calculate the odds differential against the defender's strength. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just say, right, I've got 25 plus 12 against 7, look at that table and roll and get the bigger number? Because sometimes you might be able to push the guy out the way or wound him or stun him, and the other guy then find an easier attack. So swings and roundabouts. You can retreat after combat, and remember, if you retreat past an enemy, there's a chance of infiltration. There's advance after combat as well, where you can break through the enemy lines. And from memory, I don't think you suffer infiltration if you're advancing after combat. Okay, missile fire and combat concerning horses. Well, if the horses are on their own, you can shoot at them. That's just a bit mean, isn't it? But they have a defense of 1. And that takes us to page 13 of the rule. Yeah, I've skimmed over a few things. A lot of the rules will come out as we play, because when I actually talk through, I'm going to go in a bit more detail. I'm going to reread the rules tonight to get my head around, get that infiltration rule. So, but that's what the game looks like, as is. Clear up the movement. I am going to do a setup for the Saxons, and then we'll roll to see if I am the Saxons, and then we'll take it from there. So let me bring this back up to me, and let's see what I want to talk about. And that's my run through of the rules. A lot of it was for me to remember, and I thought, well, okay, why not just do a video of it? I have played GUISCARD about a year and a half ago, which is on my channel. Check that out. It's in the playlist. So this is a refamiliarization for me, and hopefully an introduction for you. I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow. As I say, I don't know which side I'm going to play, but I will do a setup for the Saxons, and then play the game, do a log file, ask my opponent if he minds if I bring that up into the log file through to the actual video, and yeah, we'll play it through. It shouldn't take, it's 12 turns. The turns can be quite quick, because there's nothing really complicated terrain wise. We haven't got to worry about a siege. We haven't got to worry about castle walls or buildings. they do add to the complexity. So it should be straightforward. Famous last words, I know. Um, and it'll be my first time playing this guy, so hopefully he's pleasant company. I'd say when I was doing Panzerblitz with Harry, it was the first time I played him. Turned out very nice company, good to talk to. That's what we want. Um, Play fast, have fun. As you know, it's my sort of mantra. Um, but yeah, thank you for watching if you got this far. And Ken, if you could hit the like button, any comments much appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. It all helps the channel to grow. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and hopefully I will do at some point when I can. So until then, play games, have fun, and I'll see you on the flip side. Finally, bye internet. Yeah, I pressed the button before I actually went bye. So I'll do it now. And now I'm going to go and drink a beer and commiserate. Wrong side. There we go.